These are the times Homer Simpson definitely deserved to go to jail. Starting with the episode Homer vs. Lisa and the Eighth Commandment, when Homer's theft almost sends the family to hell. This episode opens with Homer's ancestor, who loses all his stolen goods as Moses announces,
"Thou shalt not steal."
I promise this will be relevant later. Then we jump to the present, where Homer wakes up from his hammock nap thanks to Flanders yelling at a cable man. He explains to Homer that the cable guy offered to illegally give him every cable channel for $50, and never one to miss getting something for free, Homer chases after the cable truck.
What do you want?
I want free cable!
Homer starts having second thoughts as it's being installed, but the cable guy reassures him with a pamphlet that's titled, "So You've Decided to Steal Cable." Sure, this isn't shady at all. He shows off the new addition to the home, and with 68 channels, including MTV, this was a much bigger deal back then, the kids are quick to check out what's on offer, and Marge is skeptical about the free part of the deal, but after reading the shady pamphlet, she too comes around to the idea. But Lisa starts to question if what they've done is right, when she and Bart learn about hell, and how if they don't follow the 10 Commandments, they'll end up there. Lisa takes this to heart, focusing on one specific commandment, "Thou shalt not steal." When they get home, she asks Homer if he's sure this isn't stealing. He brushes her off, but the seed has already been planted in her head. Lisa is 99.9% sure they're going to hell for stealing cable. Her vision sparks Lisa into a religious debate about why the world is so littered with sin. When I was 8, I was debating with cereal to have for breakfast, but sure, religion is cool too, I guess. She tells her dad that everyone seems to steal, including themselves. But Homer proves to her that it isn't stealing, by asking her if it's stealing since she didn't pay for the clothes she's wearing. Am I kind of agreeing with Homer on this? The conversation ends as Homer sees an ad for an upcoming fight. He invites his work friends to come watch the fight at his house, and word quickly spreads, with everyone in Springfield showing up to watch. While this is going on, Lisa talks to Reverend Lovejoy about the conversation she had with her dad, and about him getting cable for free. She asks if she should have him arrested, but Lovejoy tells her that that'd break the 5th commandment, honor thy father and mother. Man, religion is complicated. He instead suggests she peacefully protests Homer's choice.
I think stealing cable is wrong, so I'm choosing not to watch it in the hope that others will follow my example.
Homer talks to Marge later that night about it, worried that Lisa might be too moral. But Marge says that it might be better to unhook the cable since she caught Bart trying to watch an inappropriate channel. That's not enough for Homer to give up his new favorite thing, though, as he puts his foot down about keeping the cable, literally. Later on, the shady cable guy breaks into her home to try and sell Homer a car radio. It's only now that Homer's clocking that he might not be the most honest salesman. He's always a little slow on the uptake. He takes precautions to protect their house, locking it up and barring the windows. We get to the night of the fight where every character shows up to crowd around the TV, but as they're getting ready to watch, Lisa blocks the screen to tell them about her protest. When Moe shows up, Homer rushes to hide the beer glasses that he stole from the bar. He's even quicker to hide everything he stole from work when his boss, Mr. Burns, shows up. He didn't have to worry about hiding those stolen goods as 2 cops showed up to ask about his illegal cable. He caves immediately and tells them it was Marge's idea to get it. Way to throw her under the bus. But as it turns out, they were only there to watch the fight. With so many scares in such a short amount of time, Homer starts to feel guilt for what he's done. The fear of going to jail also gets the better of him, and he goes outside to join Lisa's peaceful protest. As everyone leaves, he climbs the pole and clips the cable wire, disconnecting it. Sure, he disconnected the power on both sides of the street first, but hey, his heart was in the right place. Next on the list is Season 8's The Twisted World of Marge Simpson. I know some of you are confused about this one. What did Homer do wrong? Well, let's get into it. This episode starts with Marge at a meeting for the Investorettes. They're discussing what they want to invest in or finance, deciding to go to a franchise fair to buy a business. Marge says she's not sure about a high-risk venture. The rest of the women are annoyed with her caution and kick her out of the group. At home, Marge tells her family about how much she's upset about being kicked out of the club. They all encourage her to look into a franchise. They go to the franchise fair and Marge looks at several different franchises, feeling that she shouldn't invest in anything. As she's about to leave, she runs into her old group. They have a very tense and awkward exchange. The Investorettes close in on the one business that Marge has been considering, and she gives up. That is, until she runs into a man running a business called Pretzel Wagon. After some persuasion, she buys the franchise and goes to work. She sets up an office, gets flyers out, and learns the recipe. Soon after she buys the business, they go to the nuclear plant and start to sell her pretzels to Homer's co-workers. Then the Investorettes bring their food truck to the same location and steal all of her business. Marge starts to get down on her business, but with the support of her family, gives it one more go. She hands out free pretzels to a baseball crowd, but just as they're about to eat them, Mr. Burns wins a giveaway, and the crowd starts to throw the pretzels in anger. Her family tries to cheer her up after so many failures, but she decides to close the business. Homer decides he has to do something drastic. And I do mean drastic. He reaches out to none other than the Mafia, asking them for help. They take to the streets of Springfield, shutting down hot dog stands, scout cookie sales, and even the Investorettes, though they are especially brutal to the Investorettes. Marge is none the wiser of this strong-arming, thinking her business is thriving. However, Homer is soon called upon by Fat Tony, leader of the Mafia. Fat Tony wants him to return his favor, but Homer turns him down. Marge has a delivery out in the desert, but it's an ambush. The Mafia pushes her off the road and tells her what her husband did, saying that they deserve 100% of her earnings now, since he wouldn't work with them. Marge returns home, and this is where what Homer truly did comes out. She asks him if he told the Mafia that they could eliminate her competition by savage beatings and attempted murder.
In those words, yes.
Homer deliberately set up a deal with the Mafia and gave them permission to commit murder if they needed to, just so Marge's pretzel business could be successful. While it's sweet that he'd do anything for his wife, this is definitely a conspiracy charge at least. Homer and Marge reconcile, with her telling him that he should have let her succeed or fail her own way. She decides that the Mafia won't see a single cent of her money. The 12 hours are over, and the mob comes to collect. Marge and Homer refuse. Just as things start to look grim, they're interrupted. Helen and the rest of the Investorettes have hired the Yakuza to fight Marge's mob since they ruined their business. Marge and Homer go inside as the two mobs start to fight. Lisa and Bart come to see what's going on, and Marge tells them,
"Oh, it's just a mob war. Go back to sleep, honey."
Yeah, just a mob war. Okay, Marge. Next on the list is The Trouble with Trillions, where Homer commits a number of crimes, starting with tax fraud. This episode starts on New Year's Eve, just before midnight. All of Springfield is celebrating the new year. Well, almost all. Ned Flanders is woken up by the commotion, excited because he can, finally, file his taxes. This is the most Ned Flanders thing I've ever heard of. He rushes to the post office as soon as it opens to file his taxes. Everyone else waits until April 15th. This includes Homer, who thinks he doesn't have to pay this year because he paid last year. Lisa informs him that he has to pay again this year. Homer starts to panic and fills out his taxes right before they're due. He fills them out incorrectly. He puts down that he has 9 kids. Some of this feels intentional. When Marge tries to correct him, he tells her,
If I don't hear you, it's not illegal.
After lying about his deductions, how many kids he has, and everything else, he races to turn it in before midnight. On the way, he runs into a red light, saying it's not illegal if he's not looking. He runs the red light, causing a major accident. I guess the other drivers didn't get the memo. He manages to get his taxes in right on time, and shortly after, the IRS finds him at Moe's. They drag him away to the audit office. They tell him they could send him to jail for 5 years, but offer him an alternative solution. He can work for them. They put a wire on him and send him back to Moe's to see if any of his friends are doing anything illegal. He finds out that one of the men at the bar has a militia that's planning to beat up high government officials. The agents rush in and immediately arrest him, making the rest of the bar suspicious. The IRS calls on Homer again, this time for a more dangerous assignment. They fill him in on a $1 trillion bill that was meant to aid their allies after the war. Montgomery Burns was the one chosen to deliver it, but it never arrived. The IRS believes that Mr. Burns still has that $1 trillion bill. Homer is conflicted, but is told he has to do it to stay out of jail. They want him to commit a crime to cleanse him of his other crime? That doesn't sound like a good way to get things done. Homer sneaks into Mr. Burns' property and knocks on the door. Mr. Burns tries to release the hounds, but none come. Reluctantly, he allows Homer inside so he can scald him with something instead. Homer spins Mr. Burns a story, but impatiently, the man tosses the water onto Homer. It's still cold. He goes to get him a towel, and that's when Homer starts his search. After looking around the kitchen, he's unsuccessful. He gets caught by Mr. Burns, who assumes that he's a reporter for a magazine. He excitedly shows him around, and after some time, they get to a statue of Mr. Burns holding the $1 trillion bill. Homer asks about it, and Mr. Burns tells him that it isn't the real $1 trillion bill. The real bill is in his wallet. He shows it to Homer just as the agent breaks in. They arrest him and seize the $1 trillion bill. Mr. Burns goes on a spiel about how the true criminals are the government, how it isn't fair they charge people like Homer taxes for things that aren't important. He calls them crooks. Homer starts realizing what he's doing is wrong. He pulls the rug out from under them, knocking them all to the floor. He saves Mr. Burns, and they go into hiding in Cuba. They try to buy Cuba from President Castro, who asks to see the bill. Mr. Burns asks him to give it back, and he acts clueless. They head home on a raft, penniless and humiliated, and we're to assume they face no consequences when they return. Go figure. We head back into Season 8 for Homer vs. the 18th Amendment, where Homer becomes a bootlegger. You heard me? Yeah, get ready for this one. It's St. Patrick's Day in Springfield, and everyone is lined up to buy a drink by 9 a.m. Many of the citizens are completely drunk by the time the parade is halfway through, causing chaos. Amidst the violence and destruction, Bart accidentally gets drunk. I'd always figured he'd sneaked a beer or two on purpose. It doesn't take long for Prohibition to bring Speakeasy into the picture, with Moe's becoming a pet shop as a front. It doesn't take long for those who like the Prohibition to find the place, bringing it to Mayor Quimby. They demand he hire someone who will actually do something. This brings in Prohibition agent Rex Banner. He suspects Chief Wiggum, and they start getting rid of alcohol, even convincing the Mafia to stop smuggling it.
This is nice. No bribes!
Homer takes it upon himself to do something about the lack of alcohol. He and Bart dig up the contents that were buried before and start making their own alcohol, smuggling them out of their house in bowling balls. They go to the bowling alley where Homer and Moe have created a wild way to get booze to his speakeasy. Rex Banner knows there's beer being smuggled under his nose by someone known as the Beer Baron. Marge finds out about Homer's deeds and thinks it's clever and supports him. With how successful Homer has been as the Beer Baron, it was only a matter of time before he ran out of pre-made booze. He and Bart start to make their own to help keep Moe in business. Rex Banner is running out of options and starts asking everyone on the street if they're the Beer Baron. In his desperation, he misses perhaps the biggest clue in his case. Business is going great, until their stills in the basement begin to explode. This happens all night, and while Homer tries to hide it from Marge, she already knows. She tells him to just quit while he's ahead since things are getting more risky now. He's had his fun. Homer agrees to quit after an explosion catches him on fire. The day after he decides to quit, the former police chief holds him at gunpoint. He demands that Homer give him his money, but Homer says that he can help him out instead.
How would you like to show him up by beating him at his own game?
He allows Chief Wiggum to capture him, letting him tell the news all about his plan and how he did it. So Homer not only distributed illegal goods, but also made them in his basement with the help of his child. That seems like it deserves some jail time. Homer expects to only get a slap on the wrist, but the law states that punishment should be distributed by catapult. Just as they're about to catapult him, Marge steps in to defend her husband. She tells the crowd that he was just trying to keep their freedom that was taken away. Rex Banner starts to counter her, but takes a few steps too many and is catapulted out of town. Homer is set free due to the clerk finding more about the law and realizing it was repealed. Really? You're just out here wasting everyone's time? The mayor orders that alcohol be resupplied to the town, and the Mafia obliges, getting everyone in Springfield drunk once again. Next up is Lisa's Rifle. This one has a Lisa main plot, but for the purpose of this video, we'll be focused on the side plot where Homer carries out a lot of illegal activity. This plotline starts with Homer making Bart drive, while he chows down on a piece of pizza. Bart is clearly struggling with controlling the vehicle and keeping it steady. Homer gives him commands, and Bart almost runs over his grandpa. Homer sees a sugar truck that's cracked on the side of the road, spilling tea into the streets. He slams on his brakes to investigate further. He offers the driver a quarter to call for help, stating he'll watch the truck. Once the driver is gone, he begins stealing the sugar. He does this by shoveling it into the trunk of his car. Guess him offering to help wasn't as sweet a move as we first thought. Bart asks if this was stealing, and Homer tells him that it is. Yeah, it's definitely stealing, Homer. Homer makes dinner for the family, and as they start to complain that it tastes funny and hurts their teeth, he explains it's because he's loaded it with sugar. Specifically, some of the 500 pounds of sugar he stole. He reveals his plan to sell the illegally obtained goods for profit. Marge and Lisa tell him the store sells it for cheaper, and that it doesn't have nails and broken glass in it. He calls those things prizes, and is adamant to carry out his plan. He goes door to door, carrying a huge bag of sugar. He tries to sell it around town, starting with Seymour Skinner, but doesn't have any luck as Skinner's mom tells him no after a quick argument through the door. He actually ends up getting Seymour grounded. When he gets home, he shows Marge his profits for the day. A whole $1. A dollar that he didn't earn, by the way. He found it waiting for the bus. Marge tells him that he might have earned $1, but lost a lot more by not going to work at the nuclear plant. She tells him that the plant told her if he doesn't go in tomorrow, then not to go in Monday either. Homer becomes paranoid that others might try to steal his sugar like he stole it from the truck. He sits outside all night to protect the sugar. He stays up all night and starts to doze off as the sun comes up. Marge finds him and wakes him up, telling him to give up his crazy sugar scheme. He says he can't because he doesn't want to live a mundane life. She tells him to get rid of the sugar and he says no. Just as he defies his wife, a swarm of bees come for his sugar, landing on it. Karma can be a real bee, huh? These bees belong to two beekeepers, who follow a stray bee right to Homer's sugar pile. They think this is a ploy by him to sell their bees back at an inflated cost. Homer is confused, but goes along with it. They offer to pay him $2,000 to get their bees back. He agrees, but just as the deal is about to be finalized, a rainstorm happens, washing away the sugar. The bees leave, and the sugar is ruined. Homer lays in the puddle, distraught about losing the sugar. It doesn't take long for him to bounce back, telling Marge,
"Mountain of sugar is too much for one man."
This ends the side plot. Going over the crimes committed this episode, we have reckless driving, child endangerment, stealing, trying to sell illegally obtained items, and bee napping? That's gotta be a crime, right? The list of crimes is long with this one. Now we move on to the city of New York versus Homer Simpson. This'll be the last Homer versus on the list, I promise. Everyone gathers at Moe's after work for a beer, but Moe tells them before they can drink, they all need to have a talk. The police told him that 91% of traffic accidents were caused by the 6 of them, so they have to start having designated drivers. They draw to see who will be the designated driver. The unfortunate soul who can't drink is Barney, the known alcoholic. This is already hard for him, but gets worse as the Duff Partymobile pulls up to give him a prize he'd won, an endless mug of booze. He turns it down reluctantly because he's the designated driver. He stays sober the entire night and drives them all home in Homer's car. Homer tells him to return the car the next day and stumbles inside. 2 months pass, and Barney and Homer's car are both still missing. Barney returns, but the car is still missing. Barney went on a 2-month bender and lost Homer's car, having no idea where it is.
"So you lost my car, eh? Well, that's just grand."
That night, Homer gets a letter from New York City telling him where his car is and how it's illegally parked. He has to come get the car, or they'll throw it in the river at his expense. He gripes about going to New York City, claiming that it's a terrible place because of something that happened in his past. The rest of the family is excited to go. As they get there, everyone but Homer takes in the sights. Homer finds his car in the middle of New York, covered in tickets and booted. Annoyed, he tries to remove the boot with his teeth, but after no luck, he's told to call the number on the boot in order to get instructions on what to do next. He calls the number on the boot and is told he has to wait outside his car between 8 and 5 to wait for an officer to come, so he can pay and get the boot removed.
"You expect me to sit here from 9 to 5? That's how many hours?"
He doesn't even make it till noon before he gets impatient and hungry. Since he can't leave, he gets food from a nearby food cart. He discovers they sell crab juice and drinks a bunch of cans. Now he needs to pee, but he can't leave his car. Really, what did he expect? He goes over to the mailbox and tries to pee in there, but is stopped. This is probably a few crimes wrapped into one, now that I think about it. He keeps waiting, but after no sign of the parking guy, he hurries inside the nearest building to use the restroom. He looks out the window and sees the officer writing him another ticket while he's not there. Go figure. It's always as soon as you turn your back. He goes back down and sees that he's been fined $250 for not waiting by his car. Angry, he gets in the car and starts it up, forcing his car forward with the boot on it. This causes debris to fly up and hit other cars, and creates huge chunks in the asphalt. He stops at a construction site and steals a jackhammer long enough to force the boot off his car.
Homer 1, New York, nothing.
After he gets it off, he gets back in his destroyed car and goes after his family. He drives through a park and basketball court and finds them in a horse-drawn carriage. He tries to drive the carriage off the road and cuts it off to get his family out of the carriage and into his car. They leave New York with Lisa asking if they'll come back next year. Homer says they'll see. I think that's gonna be a no. So in this episode, Homer tries to defile a mailbox by peeing in it, illegally removes a boot from his car, breaks other people's windshields, destroys the road, and assaults a carriage driver. We can also assume he probably doesn't pay for those several unpaid parking tickets. Just a few episodes after our previous entry, we have the Cartridge Family, in which Homer gets a gun. I think we all know the chaos that's about to go down. This episode starts with Homer deciding to take his family to a soccer game that's coming to town. The day starts with lots of people excited to see the match, but that dissipates, leaving an annoyed crowd at how boring the sport is. Their words, soccer fans, not mine. As fans try to leave, it doesn't take long for a riot to ensue. People begin to fight in the stands. The fighting doesn't stay in the stands, and it doesn't take long for all of Springfield to be the subject of riots. They start looting the Flanders, and Marge gets worried and tells Homer they need to do something to protect the family. He tells her he'll get some protection, and goes to buy a gun. He tries to get a gun that day, but they make him wait 5 days so they can run a background check. He threatens him.
I'd kill you if I had my gun.
That's a pretty serious threat. He waits the 5 days and is at the gun shop bright and early as soon as he can get his gun. And he used the bathroom first. They go through his background check and deems him potentially dangerous. But really, this just limits him to 3 handguns or less. He buys his gun and goes home to surprise his wife with it, which doesn't go as planned. He tells her how great the gun is while pointing it at her. Marge gets angry, telling him that she doesn't want guns in the house. She makes a reference to when Maggie shot Mr. Burns being a reason, and that's a pretty good one. Bart asks to borrow the gun, and Homer says only if he cleans his room. Marge puts her foot down, taking the gun from him. They have a disagreement about the gun before Marge agrees to go to an NRA meeting to get educated on the topic. Homer signs up to be a lifetime member to Marge's disapproval. He carries his gun into the Quickie Mart. Apu assumes that it's a robbery and tells him to take the money and get out. Homer has a small dream sequence about what it'd be like to rob the Quickie Mart. By the time he decides to do it, he's already in his car with what he wanted to buy, but he had planned to do it. He tells Marge he's been picked to host the next NRA get-together. He and Marge argue about him having the gun at the dinner table, which ends with him accidentally shooting her photo many times. Though that last shot was pretty cool. Marge tells him that if he cares about their family, then he needs to get rid of the gun. He agrees to get rid of it for her. That is, until she comes home to see Bart aiming the gun at Milhouse after they find it in the crisper drawer. Marge tells him this is the worst thing he's ever done. She takes the kids and leaves him alone to think about if he wants the gun or them more. He goes through with hosting the meeting for the NRA, even going as far as to clean the house beforehand. Though he surprises them when he uses his gun to open his beer. They scold him, telling him he could have hurt someone. They revoke his membership and kick him out of his own house until the meeting is over. His actions don't get better as he uses it to turn out his lights, but he does feel bad about his family. He finds them at a seedy motel, telling them he got rid of the gun so that she'd come home. He clearly cares more about her and his family than any kind of gun. As they're checking out, the motel is mugged. Homer pulls out a gun to stop him. Marge is surprised he lied to her, and he tells her he's sorry and she needs to get rid of the gun for him. So really, was there any lesson learned or any punishment given? Coming in at number 8, we have this episode from season 13 called Homer to the Mow. This episode starts off on a weird note with Bart digging a hole in the yard. When Lisa tries to figure out what's going on, he says he's digging to dig a hole and is acting strange. Homer tries to investigate later in the day, and Bart tells him that he's just digging. Marge even tries a therapist, but nothing is making Bart open up about why he's digging the hole. Turns out, this was just a story made up by Homer, which is heavily criticized by Moe. Homer points out that Moe has been crankier than normal, which results in Homer getting a gun pointed at him. So much for scolding Homer in the last episode we talked about. Oh, Moe. Moe explains that he has to listen to them yap and serve drinks, but they never tip him. He realizes he's lost the spark he had for bartending, telling the group that he needs to go find that spark again. He leaves Homer in charge of the bar. This is where the story starts to split into a Moe plot and a Homer plot. So we're going to focus on just the bits with Homer to see what illegal activity he gets up to. He starts his new job by wasting a lot of beer for no reason, and immediately managing to blow up something in the bar, before Moe even gets down the street. Homer soon decides to stop doing what Moe would do with the bar, allowing people to bring in outside food and even dancing with them on the bar top, which has to be unsanitary. As the record starts to skip, he goes to fix it, punching through the glass instead. So that's property damage a second time. The next time he goes to open the bar, he sees objects being thrown out of the windows, and assumes it to be teen vandals. Moe greets him, and Homer hits him with a 2x4 while calling him a dirty teen. Moe has returned and is renovating the bar in hopes that it'll revive his passion for bartending. Homer is upset that he can't be a bartender anymore, but is excited to get into the new Moe's. They get inside and see how different it is, deciding that the new postmodern style and the lack of duff isn't for them. They feel like losers there. Homer decides to open his own bar in his garage. Marge is hesitant about it since it's a full-time job. She was right to be hesitant, since he makes her and the kids run the bar while he and his friends drink. He also gets REM to play in his bar by telling them it was a benefit to save the rainforest. I'm sure this is somehow illegal, and if not, it's at least immoral. Moe finds out about the illegal bar that Homer has in his garage and is furious about it. He even states that he can't run a bar in a private residence. Homer is covering it up by calling it a hunting club. Moe calls him out on this, stating that they actually have to hunt for it to be considered a club. Homer decides they'll go the next morning, much to Lisa's dismay. Homer walks around the forest, recklessly waving around his gun in an attempt to find a turkey. He finally finds one, but Moe scares it away with a cougar call. Homer turns his gun toward Moe and Lisa, who are celebrating that they saved a turkey, and shoots. He hits Moe in the leg, and even after, he thinks he's shot a cougar? I don't know about that one. Moe and Homer do end up making up at the end of this one, with the Simpsons even spending Thanksgiving at the bar with Moe. Homer says he's thankful that he gets to spend Thanksgiving with Moe and his family, and even tips Moe, ending the episode on a very sweet note. In the number 9 slot, we have Two Bad Neighbors, which has actually been mentioned in a few previous episodes. The episode starts with Homer complaining he's bored, after finding nothing to watch on TV. Marge sends him out to pass out flyers for the local rummage sale. Homer agrees and makes Bart go out with him to help. It's a small crime, but he does litter a can on his way down the road, telling Bart it's easier than throwing it away. They realize just how fancy the house next door to them is, with Bart stating that anyone with enough money to buy it wouldn't have to live in their neighborhood.
Hey, what's wrong with this neighborhood?
They return home and prepare for the rummage sale. During the rummage sale, Flanders spots that the house has been sold, stating that at least someone sold something today. Homer takes over Flanders' microphone, bringing Springfield into song.
Hey, big spender!
We surrender!
However, just as the rummage sale starts getting exciting, they become distracted as the new neighbor moves in. Everyone crowds around to see who bought the house. The new owner steps out, and it's George Bush. He greets everyone, and in their excitement, the entire street forgets about Homer, even as he tries to recapture their attention.
Now let's all turn around and pay attention to me again.
Ned Flanders and his family go over to welcome the Bush family to welcome them on behalf of the neighborhood association. They're allowed in for lemonade and begin conversing. Rod and Todd tell George there's a boy he should watch out for. Just as they get those words out, Bart rides by in a scene that's straight out of a horror movie. A lot of what happens after this is between Bart and Mr. George. It takes place in a very Dennis the Menace and Mr. Wilson sort of way. It's very funny, but to get back to our point of the video, I'm just gonna go over a few things that happened to build up to the pinnacle moment. Bart did a slew of annoying things to the former president that included calling him by his first name and waking him up with an alpine horn. However, the straw that broke the camel's back was when he accidentally destroyed his memoirs. As a result of this, George Bush spanks Bart, telling him it's something his parents should have done a long time ago. Bart goes home and tells his parents. Homer is infuriated by this, having had his own minor run-ins with Bush already. Mostly he was taking too long in the Krusty Burger drive-thru, which is an egregious action in Homer's mind. He marches over to Bush's house and demands an apology from him. Bush says if he was any kind of father, he'd have disciplined his son a long time ago. Homer calls him a wimp for hiding behind his goons, and the two declare war. The first thing Homer and Bart do are firing bottle rockets aimed at Bush, who was standing in an open window. Thankfully none hit him, but they do fire off over 100 in the dead of night, which is still a crime. In retaliation, Bush paints a banner declaring them two bad neighbors. That's the title of the episode. However, it didn't go as planned. Homer and Bart strike again, luring Bush outside using cutouts of his sons. They then dump glue on his hair and force a wig down. This is definitely assault, guys. Finally, Bush does something drastic by driving on their lawn, splashing dirt and mud all over their house while ruining their lawn. Homer and Bart sneak into the sewers with a box of locusts to dump in his house. Bush finds out about this and gets in the sewer. A fight breaks out with Homer charging first. The fight is pretty awesome though. Bush pulls out a wire to attack Homer, and Bart throws the box of locusts, forcing the fight out of the sewer and into the streets. It's only stopped when Bush sees Mikhail Gorbachev has come to give him a housewarming gift. Bush is made to apologize and leaves shortly after. And again, I'm left wondering, how did Homer get away with this? Lastly, we have Homer the Vigilante, from Season 5. There's a break-in at The Simpsons in the middle of the night. The burglar steals Lisa's saxophone, their portable television, and Marge's necklace. though that one is less of a loss since she has a whole drawer full. It turns out several Springfield citizens have been robbed. The police announce they've made a breakthrough in the case at a press conference by finding the burglar's handkerchief, which is quickly ruined by Wiggum. The neighborhood decides to form a neighborhood watch to try and protect everyone, since the police aren't doing much. They vote Homer to be the leader of the neighborhood watch. Well, it was almost a good idea. Immediately, he arms them all with guns in his home. Everyone holding a gun accidentally shoots it in the house, including Bart. I don't think he should have a gun. They go to Herman's military antiques to buy more and different weapons, and find a mini atomic bomb. Homer has a dream about using and writing the bomb on an unsuspecting group of beatniks. While I have to admit this scene looks pretty cool, wanting to use a bomb like this is a whole new level. They didn't get the bomb, thankfully. This group quickly gets out of hand. They chase a man who has a saxophone just because he has a saxophone. They even wait until after they ask him where he got it. They kick flaming leaves all over a man's yard, causing his house and yard to catch fire. That's definitely arson. They tell him it's because he didn't have a permit. He says he did, but Homer says it's too late, leaving the man to put the rapidly spreading fires out himself. They catch Jimbo Jones spray painting walls and approach him with tire irons, ready to beat him if he doesn't have a good excuse. Thankfully, he had one.
It makes me feel like a big man.
I wouldn't have called it a good excuse, just one they happen to like. Jimbo asks to join Homer's drunken posse, and Homer lets him in, on one condition.
Can you swing a sack of doorknobs?
Homer tells a story at dinner time where he implies they flipped a card upside down and did something to the driver's grandmother after she mouthed off. Lisa tells him that he's abusing his powers and that they haven't even tried to catch the cat burglar yet. Homer actually calls his vigilante group a mob and tells her that they've expanded into other territories, so it might take longer for him to get her saxophone, one of which is world domination. Homer goes on a late-night show to defend his group when they're accused of committing more crimes than they're preventing. Homer responds with this little gem.
Oh, Kent, I'd be lying if I said my men weren't committing crimes.
He admits to his group committing crimes on air. The Springfield cat burglar calls into the show to speak to Homer. He taunts him, leading to Homer choking out the stage manager in confusion. The guy actually passes out from how hard Homer was choking him, and nothing is done about it. The burglar tells him he'll be striking the Springfield Museum to steal the world's largest cubic zirconium. The vigilante group stakes out the museum to try and stop him. Abe, Jasper, and a man named Malloy show up to try and help, but are rejected by Homer for being too old. Homer leaves his post, and the cat burglar slips in through the front to claim his prize. After he leaves, we see that Homer left his post to get drunk with a bunch of teens. His group is furious, and everyone quits his group after losing faith in him. Abe shows up and tells Homer he knows who the cat burglar is. He claims that it was Malloy. Springfield storms the retirement home to capture him. People want to let him go after realizing how charming he is, but he gets arrested. So people do get arrested in Springfield. In jail, Malloy tells them about where he hid millions of dollars he stole. He gives them 2 clues. And when they go to dig it up, they find out he tricked them to escape. And that's the top 10 times Homer should have gone to jail. Comment below any times you think Homer should have gone to jail, and subscribe for more Simpsons content.